This is Jeremy Mayfield. In 2009, NASCAR suspended him for life after he failed a drug test. But here's what NASCAR didn't tell you. A federal judge reviewed the evidence and said there was a substantial likelihood they got it wrong. NASCAR went to Mayfield's house to test him again. 40 minutes later, an independent lab found 0 drugs in his system. So either Mayfield is the fastest drug flusher in history, or something's not right. This isn't just about drug testing. It's about what happens when you challenge NASCAR's authority, and Jeremy Mayfield had already made enemies by exposing a team owner's affair and speaking out against the sport's power structure. Welcome to Track Reactions, your source for all the stories on and off the track. Please like this video and subscribe to get the latest burnt rubber. Before we dive into one of NASCAR's most controversial scandals, let's talk about who Jeremy Mayfield really was. This wasn't some nobody trying to make it big. Jeremy Mayfield was the real deal, a small-town Kentucky kid who worked his way up from BMX bikes to beating the greatest drivers in NASCAR history. Starting with the Sadler brothers' one-car operation, Mayfield literally built his own cars and made his own way. By the late 90s and early 2000s, Mayfield was running with legends like Dale Earnhardt, Jeff Gordon, and Rusty Wallace. He wasn't just competing, he was winning. But Mayfield's signature moment came in 2004 when he won at Richmond to make NASCAR's first ever chase for the Cup. It was such a clutch performance that winning your way into the playoffs became known as pulling a Jeremy Mayfield. This guy had everything: talent, wins, respect from his peers, and a bright future ahead of him. But success in NASCAR comes with pressure, and sometimes that pressure reveals cracks that nobody saw coming. In 2006, Mayfield was driving for Ray Evernham's team, but things weren't going well. The number 19 car was struggling, falling out of the top 35 in points, and Mayfield was frustrated. He started making comments about Evernham not being at the track often enough, not giving equal attention to all his teams. Then Mayfield dropped a bombshell. He publicly accused Evernham of being distracted by a close personal relationship with development driver Aaron Crocker. NASCAR's garage is a small world, and calling out a team owner like that is career suicide. Sure enough, Evernham fired Mayfield immediately. But Evernham later admitted that Mayfield was right. He was having an affair with Crocker, whom he eventually married in 2009. So Mayfield was telling the truth, but it cost him his ride. He bounced around from team to team, never finding stable footing again. By 2009, he was so desperate that he started his own team, Mayfield Motorsports, just to keep racing. This is important because it shows a pattern. Mayfield wasn't afraid to speak out against NASCAR's power structure, even when it hurt his career. May 9th, 2009. But calling out Ray Evernham was nothing compared to what happened next. On May 9th, 2009, Jeremy Mayfield's life exploded in the most public way possible. NASCAR announced that Mayfield had been suspended indefinitely for violating their substance abuse policy. They wouldn't say what drug he tested positive for, just that it was a drug of concern. But the rumors started flying immediately. People were whispering about methamphetamine. Now, most drivers would have quietly accepted the suspension, gone through NASCAR's rehabilitation program, and hoped to return. But Jeremy Mayfield wasn't most drivers. He came out swinging, claiming the test was a false positive caused by his prescription Adderall, combined with over-the-counter Claritin D. He had pharmacy receipts, a doctor's prescription, and his entire team backing his story. NASCAR's test administrator, Dr. David Black, disputed this immediately. He said in his many years of experience, he'd never seen a violation like this from over-the-counter medications. But Black also said Claritin D was among the substances they tested for, and that using it to excess could trigger a positive result. So NASCAR was basically saying Mayfield took too much allergy medicine and that somehow made him a drug user. Does that make sense to you? This is where the story gets really wild, because Jeremy Mayfield did something almost unheard of in NASCAR. He took the sanctioning body to federal court. Most drivers don't have the money or the guts to challenge NASCAR legally, but Mayfield hired lawyers and demanded a real investigation of the evidence. On July 1, 2009, U.S. District Judge Graham Mullen granted Mayfield a temporary injunction, lifting his suspension. Judge Mullen said the likelihood of a false positive in this case is quite substantial. The judge also ruled that the harm to Mr. Mayfield significantly outweighs the harm to NASCAR. In other words, destroying a man's career and reputation was worse than NASCAR having to let him race while the case was resolved. For a brief moment, it looked like Jeremy Mayfield might be vindicated. He was free to race again, and it seemed like the truth was finally coming out. But NASCAR wasn't about to let this go. 5 days after Judge Mullen lifted Mayfield's suspension, NASCAR made a move that still seems unbelievable today. They sent officials to Jeremy Mayfield's house to conduct another drug test. On July 15th, NASCAR announced that this second test was also positive for methamphetamine. Mayfield was suspended again, and this time the appeals court sided with NASCAR. But here's the part that should make your head spin. Mayfield took his own drug test just 40 minutes after NASCAR's home visit. He went to a certified independent laboratory that had no connection to NASCAR whatsoever. That test came back completely clean. 0 traces of any illegal substances. So we have 2 tests taken 40 minutes apart with completely opposite results. Either NASCAR's testing was wrong, or Mayfield somehow flushed methamphetamine out of his system in less than an hour. Medical experts said that was impossible. The half-life of methamphetamine is 12 hours. You can't go from positive to negative in 40 minutes unless something is seriously wrong with one of those tests. But the most shocking twist in this entire saga came from the last person you'd expect: Jeremy Mayfield's own family. Lisa Mayfield, his stepmother, came forward and testified that she had seen Jeremy using methamphetamine many times since 1998. She claimed to be his mother and said that she had witnessed over a decade of drug use. This was devastating testimony that seemed to support NASCAR's case. But then things got weird. Really weird. Jeremy Mayfield pointed out that Lisa couldn't legally be his mother because you can't adopt an adult. She was his father's widow, not his adoptive mother, and her claims about their relationship didn't add up. Then Lisa Mayfield did something that completely destroyed her credibility. She trespassed on Jeremy's property and physically assaulted people she found there. She was arrested, and suddenly her testimony didn't look so reliable. Eventually, Lisa Mayfield withdrew all her claims about Jeremy, and the case was settled out of court. During all this chaos, Jeremy Mayfield made an accusation that should have gotten more attention. He compared his situation to Tim Richmond, the legendary NASCAR driver from the 1980s who also faced drug-related controversies. Mayfield claimed that NASCAR had rigged Richmond's drug test, telling the testing company to find something to make it a positive test. He said NASCAR had admitted to this manipulation and that they were capable of anything. Now, I can't verify whether NASCAR actually admitted to rigging Richmond's test, but the parallels are striking. Both drivers were popular, both challenged NASCAR's authority, and both saw their careers destroyed by drug controversies that never quite added up. Tim Richmond died in 1989 without ever getting the chance to fully clear his name. Was Jeremy Mayfield facing the same kind of institutional targeting? The legal battles dragged on for years, and they destroyed Jeremy Mayfield financially and professionally. His race team collapsed, sponsors fled, and by 2011, he was facing foreclosure on his 388-acre property. Then law enforcement got involved. Acting on a tip from an informant, sheriff's deputies searched Mayfield's property and found stolen goods worth $100,000. Mayfield was arrested and charged with multiple felonies. But even this story has strange twists. The informant who provided the tip died in a motorcycle crash while fleeing police in 2012. Most of the charges against Mayfield were eventually dropped, and he pleaded guilty to misdemeanor possession of stolen property. It's like every aspect of this case was designed to make Mayfield look as guilty as possible, even when the evidence didn't support the most serious allegations. Today, more than 14 years later, Jeremy Mayfield is still suspended from NASCAR. He's found success in dirt racing and other series, but his Cup Series career is over. NASCAR has changed their drug testing policies and labs since 2009. They've also faced criticism for their handling of other controversies, including the recent antitrust lawsuit by 23XI Racing and Front Row Motorsports. But the fundamental questions about the Mayfield case remain unanswered. Why did a federal judge say there was a substantial likelihood of a false positive? How did two tests taken 40 minutes apart produce opposite results? Why did NASCAR officials go to a driver's house to conduct a drug test? Why did his stepmother withdraw her testimony and get arrested for trespassing? And most importantly, in a sport where drivers regularly get second chances for serious mistakes, why has Jeremy Mayfield never been allowed to return? Did NASCAR frame Jeremy Mayfield? I can't prove it, but the evidence raises serious questions about what really happened in 2009. What I can tell you is this: Jeremy Mayfield was a talented driver who wasn't afraid to challenge NASCAR's power structure. He exposed uncomfortable truths about team owners, fought for independent teams, and refused to quietly accept punishment he believed was unfair. Maybe that made him a target. Maybe it made him an example. Or maybe he really did fail those drug tests and everything else is just conspiracy theories. But when a federal judge says there's a substantial likelihood NASCAR got it wrong, when tests taken 40 minutes apart show opposite results, when key witnesses withdraw their testimony, you have to wonder if the whole truth ever came out. What do you think happened to Jeremy Mayfield? Was he framed by NASCAR, or did he really fail those drug tests? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to Track Reactions, your source for all the stories on and off the track.